This is the story of a girl called Yangdol. She was born in the season of autumn to the sound of a gurgling brook and the chirping of sparrows. All that is green is gone, the leaves are withered and trees bare. And yet a flower blooms in our home, our fairy daughter, her mother exclaimed. Yangdol's parents loved the mountains. They wished to teach Yangdol to love the land as much as they did. Sweet child, all that is reflected in your little eyes, the great peaks, the icy glaciers, the streams that ebb, the butterflies, beetles, birds and animals who drink that good water, and us, in our warm little home. We are all woven in an invisible bond. This land is home. It belongs to us all, Yangdol's father would say. Yangdol's mother loved to sing. At night, when moonlight poured in through their kitchen window, she sang a lullaby for her precious daughter. Somewhere in the valley lurks a curious fox, pressing silent feet on sand. Somewhere on the mountain howls a lonely wolf in want of a family. In a sleepy willow tree, a sparrow dreams of morning light and grains of rice. In the silent brook trembles a pebble in fear of a violent river far below. Below jagged rocks, a wild rose rearranges petals, waiting for first light to unfurl and dazzle. Somewhere in the moonlight, a snow leopard yawns, her eyes reflecting the rising moon. The beautiful moon, her light, graces all. When she appears in the night sky, the fox halts, the wolf stops mid-howl. The sparrow and the pebble and the rose, the snow leopard too, they all stop their chores and look and look. They look in wonder at the beautiful moon, the one that sees them all. Then they return to their quiet worlds. The beautiful moon sees all, but never reveals secrets if we ask. All the wonders in the mountains, we can't know them all. Yangdol's parents worked hard and lived a modest life. They had a little farm in which they grew barley and apricot. They had cattle too, sheep, yak and zos, who they tended to like their own children. One morning, Yangdol woke up to a commotion. Her father was carrying lifeless sheep out of their enclosure. Tears flowed down her mother's cheeks. She had her eyes closed. A snow leopard came down and took away a calf. 2 sheep were killed too, said her father. Yangdol was upset that a beast from outside had taken the lives of the animals they cared for. What were you doing today, mother, beside the dead sheep? Yangdol asked. Offering a prayer, my little one, mother replied. A prayer? Yes, for the poor sheep, the snow leopard and the mountain spirits. For the snow leopard? Shouldn't we be angry? Should we not seek revenge? Our poor sheep, cried Yangdol. It is sad, very sad. But know this, child, for 1,000 years and more, this land was the kingdom of the beasts and the birds that roamed here. We did not always live here, but they let us call it home. We must respect that. If we have received, we must offer too. Do you think the river weeps when we draw from her, or that the mountains wail when we hack the trees that have nestled in them for decades and centuries? The mountain spirit may take what is ours, for it is her land, and we are only visitors. It is a small price to pay. Don't be angry, little Yangdol. We must but grieve for the few moments of pain felt by our poor animals. That is the circle of life. Yangdol never forgot these words and grew up respecting the land and all the life in it. Her mother taught her to be a fine young shepherdess, stern yet doting, as the situation demanded. Deep in the valley, while their animals grazed peacefully, her eyes roamed the ridges for the outline of the ever-elusive snow leopard. She had never seen one. I know you're there, I just can't see you, she whispered in the wind. One day the oldest yak did not return. She has been claimed, said her mother and offered a prayer as always. You've done it again, and without even showing yourself, Yangdol complained. That day, she asked her father what a snow leopard looked like as he had seen one when he was a teenager. Smoky grey eyes, brilliant black spots, huge paws to plough through the snow, and a very long tail that she can drape around her face. She's quiet as a snowflake in the night air. You will never hear her come or go. And her coat? You would believe she wore the mountains, exclaimed her father, making a very crude figure of a snow leopard with dough meant for hot mokmoks. Later, she sat by the window and watched the moon come over the mountain. Quiet as a snowflake, she said, holding the snow leopard dough figure her father made. Yangdol grew up to be a beautiful young woman. She soon found a loving husband in the neighboring village. She moved away from her parents with a broken heart. She longed to share a cup of butter tea with her parents on winter nights. Her husband was very caring and understood her like a childhood friend. Yangdol soon settled into a new life. But one day, fate played a cruel hand. Her husband died of a sudden illness and left Yangdol forever. Heartbroken, Yangdol returned to her parents' home. Their presence offered great comfort. Slowly, she resumed the life she lived before marriage. One morning, Yangdol stepped out to see large paw prints leading away from the door. She panicked at once and ran to the sheep. They were unhurt. Then she ran to the newborn yak and his mother. The calf was feeding peacefully. Everything was in its place. Yangdol's mother watched her being tense and said, "It means good things will come. The great beast came down to bless our home. Don't be worried." Yangdol saw the most beautiful spring that year. Years passed beautifully in the village. Yangdol refused to marry again and chose to stay with her parents who were growing weaker. She now took the animals to graze by herself and worked in the field too. The inevitable happened one day. After a night of feasting and festive singing and dancing, Yangdol's father did not wake up. He was old and weak. Yangdol and her mother were heartbroken. The grief slowly consumed her mother. A few months later, on a beautiful summer evening, Yangdol's mother left her kind and gentle daughter forever. Without a husband, children, and parents, Yangdol was alone. She had neighbors and relatives who visited her, but all she could truly call her own were her animals. Yangdol remembered her father's words. She felt a connection with all the animals and elements of nature. She began to find small joys everywhere. She liked listening to the brook that flowed beside her home. It brought her childhood memories. She found company in the playful gusts of wind that separated the grain from the husk when she winnowed. She liked watching the fox through the window at night. The nosy fox didn't know it was being watched. This made Yangdol giggle. The sun painted giant shadows of a rose finch pair on a wall, and it always amused her. Some nights, she heard the alarm calls of ibex and urials resounding above the village. She knew the snow leopard was at play. "Will I ever see you? Are you even real?" asked Yangdol. Yangdol was indeed not alone. She was always in the company of the creatures of the mountains, even when she didn't see them. The creatures, they watched her from the very beginning, when she was a little shepherdess venturing out with her mother. They watched her close her eyes and whisper a prayer when she lost a sheep or a yak to snow leopards or wolves. Yangdol's prayer for the departed animal. "You have only given and I have only received, making no offering in return. Forgive me. I hope that your death was swift and without pain. I pray that you bloom as a brilliant dandelion beside the stream or return as a sprightly cloud. Perhaps the mountain spirits have an even more glorious plan in your name. Farewell, farewell." For the snow leopard and the mountain spirits. I despair but know fully that this is the price to pay. Life sustains life. Thank you for allowing me to share this beautiful land with you. Everybody knew Yangdol, the gentle soul who felt for all life that existed in the land. She deeply felt for even the wind, the rocks, the streams and the clouds. In the mountains, when she saw traps set by hunters, she would set them off. This did not go unnoticed. They watched her when she walked alone in the valley. The snow leopards knew she was hopeful of a glance every time she stopped to rest. When she saw tracks in the sand, old or new, a smile crossed her face. The creatures told their young about Yangdol. The young, when grown up, told their young. Every wolf pup, every bear and snow leopard cub was told about Yangdol, and hers was a beautiful story. In her home, Yangdol was in despair. Her knees ached from years of toil. Her shoulders froze for days. She made the decision to give away her only family, her beloved animals, to somebody who would take care of them. She wept like a child, but was happy that they would roam free in the mountains again. She barely stepped out, venturing out only to turn the prayer wheel outside her home. No more was she seen roaming the mountains or calling out to the creatures of the land. Her voice had not rung in their ears for a long time, let alone a glimpse. Conversations about Yangdol grew among the animals and the birds. One day there was a gathering. Some wondered if she had left the village. The fox and the little owl informed that she was home because they saw her often by the window at night, looking out toward the mountains. A decision was made. A beautiful winter's moon shone low in the sky. The guardian of the mountains, the snow leopard, walked slowly down the valley, her two cubs close behind her. The night was so brilliantly lit, Yangdol could even see the dreamy descent of snowflakes in her garden. Glaciers glistened in the distance. Then something caught her attention a few yards from the window. Weak and yet shining in the light of the moon that spilled in through the window and came to rest in her lap, Yangdol wiped the steam from her teacup and peered through the glass. The one they called the grey ghost of the mountains sat in her garden with two cubs, not doing anything, simply being, only glancing toward her for a few seconds before drifting away. Yangdol was overcome by a happiness she had never felt. A flower bloomed within her heart. After more than 70 years of wandering, of seeking and calling out, finding the great beast only in traces and nothing more, her moist eyes finally rested on this magnificent snow leopard. She was every bit the wonder her father described. The two cubs played at their mother's feet, then soon fell sleepy and yawned. Yangdol felt the weight of the doe figure in her hand. She heard her mother's voice. Somewhere in the moonlight, a snow leopard yawns. People had gathered the next day outside her home. They had come to bid farewell to Yangdol. The air was rife with conversation about her passing. In her snow-piled garden were tracks of snow leopards. Those were not the only tracks. The snow was riddled with impressions made by all kinds of animals: wolves, foxes, bears, and various hoofed animals. It was like a festival of the mountain creatures had taken place quietly while everybody slept. Some said it was only fitting that a compassionate human such as Yangdol had all the creatures she loved and respected come down to bid her farewell. Or perhaps the mountain spirits had come to usher her kind soul to the other side. Some wondered if she would return as a dandelion that swayed with the wind, or a sprightly cloud, or spring itself.